All right, folks, welcome in. It is the last word on Sports Video Podcast. It is great to be back with you. I am merely the somewhat capable host, TJ Reeves. My co-host is Mike Gill. And always love talking with Mike from the ESPN radio affiliate in Atlantic City, New Jersey. That is the Sports Bash that he hosts weekday afternoons. We always chop up sports media whenever we get the opportunity. Listen, always good to be with you. Tons to go over, even though it's June. Going to be a little slower time in the summer. Lots from the NBA Finals, the Stanley Cup Finals. I was around the Dickie V since you and I were last here, and there's news about Dickie V, including a birthday for him, an ESPN re-signing. Mike, good to be with you. We got the Belmont States to talk about. We got like the UFL championship game in the minor league football to go over, a great Major League Baseball call of a leaping catch. We've got lots to cover on the Last Word on Sports Media pod. Good to be back with you, my friend.
Yeah, summertime and the living's easy, but a lot going on. As you mentioned, the NBA Finals ratings are out, not very good. We'll see what the WNBA ratings look like without their star. Did watch the Belmont. I missed my man Larry Colmus on the call there. Plenty of news, notes. Dickie V, you mentioned that. I've had Dickie V on my radio show before, and we got it's crazy. Adam Silver talking. You name it, we got it. You name the sport, there's something going on.
Seems like there's always something happening with sports media. Thank you for finding us. We're doing this live on social media on this Tuesday, again on Mike's YouTube page, the Mike Gill Show YouTube page. You can also find us through Twitter X and our social media handles. Follow Mike at Mike Gill Show. Follow me at Buck Sideline Guy, BUC, Buck Sideline Guy. We got NFL. There's never an off season, I guess, with the NFL. The OTAs, the organized practices, helmet, shirt, and shorts are going on all over the NFL. You know, I see the video of Cam Ward, the number 1 overall pick of the Tennessee Titans, throwing a great pass in a practice to one of his fellow players, and everybody's talking about how we can't wait to see Cam Ward coming in the upcoming season. I'm like, settle down. It's a practice. I know that we're all intrigued to see what players look like. Aaron Rodgers is now signing on with the Steelers, but I'm not going to be overly impressed in watching him in a Steeler helmet and a shirt and shorts throw the ball to DK Metcalf. I don't know about you, but I got to see more than that in an actual game before I get interested in it.
I'm surprised that these regional sports networks who are on their last leg haven't got the rights to air these practices.
Live from OTAs.
They would do well in this market, I tell you that much. If you put Eagles, there's a show that's on the regional sports network here. It's called Birds Huddle. It runs year-round. So it's just a regional sports network show that runs Eagles year-round. If they were at OTAs today and had the 2 guys sitting at a desk just talking about guys in pads and helmets, that thing would rate off the roof. I'll tell you this. The thing here that's a big deal, the beat writers tweeting out play-by-play of the OTAs, and then afterwards the stats.
The overglorified practice is a social media phenom for the fans.
In this market, yes. I don't know about other markets, but here it is a huge deal.
All right. And it's the same with Chicago.
By the way, it will lead radio shows in this market, of course, the whole time.
They're practicing. But Chicago with year 2 of Caleb Williams, the new coach, Ben Johnson, the former offensive coordinator of the Lions, and all the optimism. You know, what's it going to look like for Kansas City with Mahomes? What's it going to look like for the Patriots now with Mike Vrabel? The Cowboys are the Cowboys, on and on and on down the list.
Well, the big difference is the Cowboys are the Cowboys. They don't really have anything else of substance to talk about. The Mavericks, the Texas Rangers are not a big deal in that market. In the Northeast, the baseball teams do make waves. The Phillies are a playoff team. They've been to the playoffs before, and they fall second to OTAs.
Yeah, to practice. All right. Thank you for finding us as well on podcast. If you're hearing us on the podcast through Apple, Spreaker, Spotify, Last Word on Sports Media Podcast, come find the video show. Likewise, if you're on the video show, understand that we're a podcast as well. You get interviews, different guests, etc. For example, you recently interviewed track announcer Larry Colmus of NBC Sports' coverage of the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness. They can go back and listen to it on this podcast feed about him calling those thrilling races. I also recently interviewed Sean Kelly, the voice of the Florida Gators, longtime voice of ESPN Radio on their football, baseball, and basketball, and had the opportunity to talk with him about the craft and about calling the national title win for the Florida Gators in San Antonio in college basketball back in April. So if you enjoy those kind of interviews, they're on the podcast feed. So if you're with us on video, go find the podcast feed as well for the Last Word on Sports Media podcast. So we've got all the promotional stuff out of the way. Let's get into the NBA Finals. Blowout win in Game 2 for the Oklahoma City Thunder after another great comeback by Indiana to win Game 1. Game 1 was rated. Game 2, not unexpected, Mike Gill, fell off the cliff ratings-wise. But wait a minute. Adam Silver thinks we talk, the commissioner of the NBA, too much about the ratings. He led off and went on and on for a couple of minutes, his commissioner's address at the beginning of the NBA Finals about how we pay too much attention to the ratings, that we talk too much about the ratings. It's negative, that we shouldn't be talking as much about that. Somehow, I think if this was all-time rating stuff, the NBA would put it everywhere and demand that we talk about this, Mike Gill. Do you not agree? But the commissioner, he's a little rating sensitive right now. He doesn't want us talking about worst Game 2 rating for ABC since 2007. The Spurs and the Cleveland Cavaliers is the lowest rated game. Yikes.
Well, listen, they just signed an 11-year deal, so they have a little leeway to be okay with this. But the same commissioner came out and suggested that this is what they were aiming for. Parity, smaller markets. It's okay if Green Bay plays Pittsburgh in the Super Bowl, so it should be okay for us in the NBA. But you've got to build up to that. You can't just years of branding those two teams. They need to hope that Oklahoma City and Indianapolis are now good for the next 5 to so years so that they can brand these guys and make them a big deal. So, yeah, you're not going to get a hit right off the bat. I think he's cognizant of that maybe internally, but on the surface he's saying, why are you bashing my league?
Well, and you make a great point that the NBA's had a variety of different champions. When you really look back over the last 20 years of the Spurs or the Mavericks or the Heat or the Warriors or the Lakers, and even recently the Milwaukee Bucks got a title, and obviously somebody out of Oklahoma City and Indiana will get a championship out of this version of the NBA Finals. So the variety of different teams has been there, Mike Gill. The real question is how much of the audience is still there from what it was, and can they begin to regrow some of it? We've talked about that the last few weeks. So,
you know, it's a weird time. It is a weird time. You mentioned like those teams had some established stars, right? You had Tim Duncan. You know, they were boring, but they had Tim Duncan. You know, you had Dirk Nowitzki, a Hall of Fame player. They were in an era where those guys were a big part of making that era what it was. Now you've got these new guys that no one is really introduced to. So that is why, you know, it's going to be interesting to see. I think Oklahoma City certainly has the staying power. It appears that Indiana has a player in Halliburton that everybody's ready to jump on and say that they have the staying power. But sometimes these teams are kind of fly-by-nighters. They come, and then they go right back to being the 48-win team, getting knocked out in the first round. We'll see if Indiana can avoid that. And then if they can be a year-to-year star-studded team, will the NBA fans gravitate towards them? You know, because quite frankly, I know San Francisco is a big market, but Golden State was really a nothing burger until Steph Curry got there and made them something. Like nobody was clamoring to watch the Golden State Warriors for the last 30 years.
Well, but I mean, they had don't disparage Run TMC with Tim Hardaway, Mitch Richmond, and Chris Mullin. You and I speak that language from the late 80s and the early 90s, but if you're not a hardcore NBA fan, you don't know that. They certainly wanted the championship.
I mean, but that was back in the, you're talking about in the 90s, right? I mean, but I don't even know that back then that was a team that people were like clamoring to see on national television that was drawing ratings so much so that, the league was hitting all-time highs because of the Warriors there. They have 70-win teams, all that stuff. Oklahoma City won 68 games, kind of under the radar, right? I mean, if you walked up to the common guy on the street and said, hey, the number one seed in the Western Conference was who? Probably don't know the answer.
Most people would probably guess Golden State or the Lakers, just as an offhand guess if you didn't know. All right, so the finals are going to continue. One other little critique and criticism. Their postseason bleeds so long into late May and June. And I realize that even in the heyday of the 80s and the early 90s, the postseason was bleeding into June. But this will go even deeper now into June. And there's too many days between games. I mean, they just played on Sunday night, but they waited 3 days in between game 1 and game 2. Now they have waited another couple of days in between game 2 and game 3 that will be played on Wednesday night. Actually, 3 days.
Yeah. And by the way, this is the travel day, but you're going from Oklahoma City to Indiana, not exactly the furthest flight here. It's not like you're going from L.A. to Boston.
And I'm not saying that when you have travel that maybe you shouldn't have an extra day, but there was no travel between game 1 on Thursday and game 2 on Sunday night. I know Sunday night's a great TV night. You're bleeding this along, and it kind of gets out of sight, out of mind in the present day with all the other sports and all the other things that are out there on the internet, YouTube, and otherwise. That's me saying that. Any final thought on the NBA, or shall we move on?
I'm going to say broadcast, the whole presentation has been rotten, quite honestly. I think the pregame has been disjointed all over the place. The broadcast has been, it's okay. It's been all right. They're obviously finding their way here, but the whole thing with the trophies, the Larry O'Brien on the court in game 1, then they try to super in game. The NBA Finals feels like a Tuesday night in February. There is no pomp and circumstance. There is no, this is the NBA Finals. There's nothing that makes this feel big. The studio shows have been train wrecks. The broadcasts have been okay. I think Richard Jefferson's done a nice job, but there's been a lot of talk. We talked about that last week. It almost feels like they've told Jefferson to kind of take over the lead analyst part of the analyst stuff. Breen, the whole thing with he didn't take bang the one night. Then he came out and said, that was fun, little banter back and forth. But these three just don't seem to have the same personalities that mesh, and you're seeing that here on the biggest stage.
And we keep talking about that you've thrown together a 3-person booth with Doc Rivers, with Doris Burke, and then Doc Rivers took a coaching job last year in the middle of the season, so you had no time to get used to that group. You put J.J. Redick in, and you tried to make that work, but he left to take a coaching job. You're trying to make it work with Richard Jefferson, and I don't know. Again, there's a lot of discussion about Doris Burke and her involvement, but it's not the end of the world if she's not on the number 1 team anymore, and she's still back to doing games wherever and whenever. Maybe they should go with a more dynamic, well-spoken former player and just one person, and try it with Mike Breen if that's what they believe. You and I keep talking about that the last 2 or 3 weeks. We'll see.
I think Jefferson does a good job. He's funny, but the problem is I think there's a disconnect in generations here. He's a funny guy. He's got a personality. Mike Breen, a little bit more of a straight shooter. Doris Burke, really no personality at all. So you put the 3 of them together, and you got Richard Jefferson, who wants to be lighthearted and fun, and then you got Doris, who wants to kind of be a straight shooter, and Breen's not the kind of guy who's like, hey, let's talk about social media here. It is a weird dynamic between the 3, but I do think Jefferson has done a good job in his role in these finals.
I understand. All right, so the
studio
NBA
show's been disastrous,
and that's the reason why they did the trade for Inside the NBA that will become the studio show, because it has been a train wreck for a long time. All right, so we spent some time on that. Let's move on to the Stanley Cup coverage. Again, this is lesser audience than even the NBA Finals. They are fortunate to get 4 or 5 million people watching in the United States. I get it, but the broadcast is so much better. The broadcast itself with Kenny Albert, Eddie Olczyk, Brian Boucher, dramatic first 2 games of the series, Edmonton and Florida in the rematch, both in overtime. Florida winning with a double overtime goal by Brad Marchand of the Florida Panthers, a saving goal for them. They could have been down 0-2, the defending champs, but they won in double overtime the other night in Edmonton. They now, at the time that we're doing this pod, have won game 3 handily. But I love this team. Kenny Albert and Olczyk meshed back at NBC, and I believe we're going to play this here for the pod audience if we're able to, from Turner and Warner Brothers Discovery. The finish of the double overtime the other night and Kenny Albert's call here of the clinching goal for Florida to even up the series. We'll play that, and then we'll talk more about this broadcast team, Mike Gill.
Ahead for Marchand, moving in on Skinner. Marchand is in, he scores! Marchand wins game 2 for the Panthers in double overtime.
And there you go on TV, because they lay out and let the silence of the Edmonton fans, Mike Gill, rule the day there after that overtime goal. Again, just I enjoy that trio. You talk about a 3-person booth that works. It works there with Brian Boucher in the glass as the former goaltender. Olczyk, again, just makes great observation after great observation on the fly. He's tremendous. Your thoughts on the coverage there?
That TNT goal, it's funny. The goal and the call almost reminded me when the Flyers lost that 2010 game to the Blackhawks in the final there, when Patrick Kane kind of wrapped around the net and you couldn't tell whether it went in or not. Right. It was almost like an anticlimactic ending to the Stanley Cup. That ending of that game there, of this overtime game, which, by the way, I tried to stay up for as long as I could. There's another problem. You only got 4 million viewers, 5 million viewers, and half of us fell asleep for the biggest moment of your game.
Because that finish was about 12:30 a.m. Yes. Eastern time, 11:30 Central. Now I know in Western Canada that's still prime time, but for a lot of the audience, it's late, and overtime hockey can be that. But again, I thoroughly enjoy that crew. I realize not everybody's a hockey person, but I thoroughly get something out of them all the time.
I would agree, though. I'm not, and as I said, I'm not the biggest hockey person, but I am watching, here late in the game. I'm watching third period. I'm watching Edmonton come back down 3-1, take the lead, and I'm enjoying the broadcast. I'm enjoying, all the insight. I think their studio show is insightful. It's fun. They do a good job getting you ready for the game between the periods, because that's another problem. It is now 11:45 at night, and now you're going to overtime. You got to sit for 20 minutes through the
intermission.
Intermission, which is not like it's like, hey, we got to go to overtime. All right, we're going to start up in 5 minutes here like they do in the NBA. You go to overtime, hey, we're going to tip it right back up. You got to go 20 minutes intermission, and their studio show at least keeps you entertained through that long 20-minute stretch there.
Understood. And again, the hockey audience is better in Canada. I think I saw where they had something like 5 or 6 million people watching the double overtime game. So the combined audience, again, is somewhere around 10 million, something like that. It's nowhere near what the NBA is, much less what pro football is, etc. So we get that. We understand that. It is the Last Word on Sports Media podcast. So the Stanley Cup playoffs did continue with Florida winning in game 3 to lead 2-1. So they're on the verge of the repeat. If they can get it, we saw a repeat with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Again, 6 years in a row, a Florida team in the Stanley Cup finals. The Panthers are 2 games away now from a repeat down in Miami. Who knew that Florida would be the hotbed of hockey, but that's what it appears to be. All right, so let's move on to our guy, Dick Vitale, and ESPN announcing, first of all, happy birthday, Dickie V, 86 years young. Happy birthday to Dick Vitale. And ESPN has also announced on Monday that they have re-upped Dick Vitale through the 2027-2028 season. I don't think there was any doubt that he was going to try to broadcast this year. They hope to have him broadcast another 2 years. Dick has battled cancer 4 different times over the last 3 years. Came back to call games, as you know, Mike, and for the audience at the end of last season, there was a lot of doubt as to whether he could call a game any longer with cancer treatment on his vocal cords. 86 years old. And, Mike, I was around him last week for the Sports Club of Tampa Bay. He lives in the greater Tampa Bay area in Sarasota, Florida. The Sports Club of Tampa Bay put him into their Hall of Fame. Sports Club of Tampa Bay has been around for over 50 years. And Dick did an amazing job getting up to the stage and talking about his cancer treatment. There's a photo that I took that we're showing to the video audience. Dick, very emotional, talking about what it meant to come back and do those games at the end of the year last year, the Duke game with Clemson, where Clemson upset him, and then do the ACC tournament games. And who knows how much longer he can continue to do this at 86 years of age after the cancer treatment. But Mike, pick up on this point about Dick Vitale, what he means to college basketball, how important he is, what an ambassador he is. Go ahead. Thoughts?
Well, listen, it's funny because he is an iconic voice for someone of our age. We were talking about this in my studio here about how there are no movie stars and television stars anymore. Dick Vitale is one of the last, along with maybe Bill Rafferty, and it's ironic that, the biggest voices that are synonymous with the sports, two of them are still going in the college game. But Dickie V, Bill Rafferty, I would say those two are synonymous with their sport right off the bat there. How many more voices are at that level? When you say college basketball, the first name is Dickie V, and it's, tremendous at 86 years old that he is still able to keep bringing the energy that he does.
Yep, and let's hope he can hang in there for this season. There's not a given.
Yeah, I had him on my radio show. Man, it had to be I want to say 15 years ago.
Wow.
Nicest guy. But, you just sent him a message, and he got back. It's not like he was big-timing you. He had no problem coming on and gave you as much time as you wanted. I mean, this is the biggest voice in the sport, and he's texting you back. Hey, listen, you send a text message to people and ask if they can come on. Sometimes you don't even get a response, not even a go F yourself.
and they're not even Dick Vitale while they're doing that. ESPN also announced that they have created a Dick Vitale Invitational pre-conference season basketball game, and that game will be in November every year. The first installment will be Duke and Texas coming this November of the Dick Vitale Invitational, not unlike the Jimmy V Classic for the late Jim Valvano and other different special events that have been created. And he's the Pied Piper of college basketball. Phenomenal stuff with Dick Vitale. So we say happy birthday, Dickie V. Again, his Dick Vitale Gala has raised, he announced this the other night, over $100 million for pediatric cancer research with the V Foundation. Let me say again, not a couple of $100,000, not $1 million, over $100 million raised in 20 years for pediatric cancer. And Dick has now battled it himself. So we love Dick Vitale, and you can't say enough about what he's meant to the growth of college basketball, 80s, 90s, and now into this century, into the 2000s. Anything else, Mike, or are we good?
No, and I'm looking forward to, as many more broadcasts. We see one of those voices we talked about this year. We saw the Hubie Brown, and the other night I was watching thinking, man, I think I would like to hear Hubie Brown in this situation right now. Just give it a to me,
You would appreciate his insight. I always loved Hubie Brown back in the 80s because he would say this every once in a while in the games. The former coach in him would come out, Mike Gill. He would say, if you're a coach, this kills you. The turnover right here, it kills you as a coach. I love that about the honesty, the candor. We missed some of that at Vitale. Wears it on his sleeve. There is no doubt. All right, you made mention that you watched the Belmont on Fox. Again, Fox keying in on different events, like garnering the Indy 500 on different big events. So the last of the horse racing Triple Crown races is now on Fox. I have to confess, I did not watch the live coverage on Saturday. I've seen the clip of the end of the race, won by the Kentucky Derby winner Sovereignty. But overall, pick it up here on thoughts of Fox doing horse racing here on Saturday.
Terrible.
Didn't like it?
Horrible.
Wow.
I mean, I could continue to go on if you'd like.
That pretty well sums it up.
It was bad. I mean, listen, I know I had Larry Comas on, and I think Larry's the best at what he does. His voice was missed on the broadcast, I can tell you that much, but the coverage, NBC makes it an event. NBC makes that the whole day the event. And I know the Belmont's not the Derby, right? It's not the Derby, and quite frankly, but they had a story here that I think they completely whiffed on. The Sovereignty, journalism, they faced off the first race. Sovereignty wins the race. Journalism wins the Preakness. And now who's going to win the third one here? They made it a cartoon show. By the way, they left the broadcast and went to a truck series race. I mean, it was
strange. So the track announcer's name, and I'm not familiar with him, but he may be the Belmont announcer, the Belmont track announcer, is Frank Maharmati, if I said that right. that did the call of the race. So you were not impressed with any of that.
I'm not saying he did a bad job. I feel like his
he's
voice,
just not your guy, Larry Colmus. It's not the same.
It's one of the things. I had Larry when we did the announcers pod. We talked to him a couple years ago, and I asked him about his cadence that is so synonymous with, like, all the horse racing callers have this cadence of like ba 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 ba, and like there's a pacing to it that makes you feel comfortable as this big race crescendos, and I just felt like you had this great race on Saturday. It was a great race. The mic levels were not great. The camera angles were weird. I just think Fox should stick with what they know.
Again, it's Frank Miramati, if I didn't say it correctly before. He is the full-time track announcer at Santa Anita, and he is also the summer race announcer at Saratoga Racecourse for all of their stuff. And he called the race. So, and again, some of the sting was out of it because there was not a Triple Crown opportunity because Sovereignty didn't run in the Preakness in Baltimore.
No, but you did have the two big horses for a rematch, and they both had won a race. And I had talked to Larry Colmus about that very thing, and he said, listen, the difference with Saratoga and Belmont, because the race is at Saratoga, not Belmont, is the racetrack is shorter than the Belmont. The Belmont is known for being the longest of the three, but Saratoga is the same length as the Derby is. So he felt that Derby race was very indicative of how this one would go, and he was right that Sovereignty pulled away from journalism the same area where it happened before.
And interesting that Sovereignty will be worth tens of millions at stud. That's the hidden inside secret. Forget about the purse for winning the Triple Crown races, etc., because that horse won the Kentucky Derby and now won another Triple Crown race. But interesting that journalism, let's hear it for journalism overall, but journalism, the horse, finished second, won the Preakness, and finished second again, Mike. That horse is going to be worth a lot, you would think, for breeding and for stud as well, for having that kind of success. And these two horses will apparently race later in the year, either in the Travers Stakes, which is another lesser-known horse race, or the Breeders' Cup, which some fans may know about. So we may not have seen the end. But for horse racing, I will just take your word for it. You are bashing the Fox Sports coverage as not good.
Listen, I don't want to, I'm not saying that the guy didn't do a good job. I felt that the mic levels weren't great, but the coverage, I think they had Terry Bradway was in there in some cockamamie way. I mean, I know NBC puts in celebrities, and they try to do that too. They make it an event, though. They make this the all-day event that is like, hey, we own, and then they're rushing it out to get to a Truck Series race.
It's kind of crazy. All right, several more things to go over before we're done on the Last Word on Sports Media podcast. By the way, we're still waiting. I haven't seen it today. CBS had primetime coverage Saturday night of WNBA basketball without Caitlin Clark, though. The Indiana-Chicago rematch. We do know that the get-in price, the secondary market ticket prices plummeted. The game was being played at the home of the Bulls and the Blackhawks, the United Center, which is not their usual arena. But no Caitlin Clark. I don't know what the audience was. Obviously, if she had been involved in prime time, probably 2.5, 3 million people. I don't know what it was. But we'll wait to see what that number ends up being.
You got 2.5 million people to watch the Women's College World Series the other day, Texas Tech and Texas. So 2.5 million for the College World Series on ESPN, not a cable number,
not a network,
not even a network number there. So that was a huge number. So you're wondering, the Women's College World Series, I wouldn't say is star-driven. You don't really know who these, participants are.
Yeah, but I mean, the women's Final Four in college basketball with Caitlin Clark helping it, and South Carolina in the unbeaten seasons, and somebody other than UConn winning the titles recently, it's grown and grown on network TV. I mean, even before Caitlin Clark was involved, back 2 or 3 years ago, they were getting 6 or 7 million people to watch the women's championship game Sunday afternoon on network TV. So there are certain events now where the women's sport is making an impact, is definitely got an audience. I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at, that 2.5 million people are watching the softball championship.
I agree.
On ESPN.
Which I thought was a big number for them. And interestingly enough, but my point, I guess, on that is that is not a star-driven event. That is just an event that, hey, we want to watch the two best teams, Texas Tech, 2.4 million viewers for that Game 3 on ESPN. Longhorns win the national championship, and it wasn't a close game, so people could have said, I want to get out of this game. But it seems that the WNBA needs their star to get that type of number.
They have other stars, and I know you're not saying that they don't. They have Asia Wilson of the Las Vegas Aces that won the back-to-back titles. They have Sabrina Ionescu, the outstanding New York Liberty player. They won the title last year. There are some stars, but Caitlin Clark is the star, and let's see when she's back.
Right.
There's talk she could be back this weekend from the thigh injury, maybe a little longer, but they need her back to help.
Right. I'm talking about to get that number that you referenced, with 2.4 million. To get that number, they need their star.
For a regular season game. You got to have the star on that. All right, so.
By the way, I did call a Texas Tech game this year, women's softball. Canada with a 3-run homer to make it a 5-4 game against Nebraska. Then they won it in the 6th on a walk-off there. So you could check the game changer.
You have your own clips. You knew before all of us knew that the Texas Tech star was going to be a star. And what is her name again? And she's about to get a whole lot more money in NIL.
Nigeri Canada. She just got $1 million. Second million. She got $1 million. She was at Stanford. She left Stanford to go to Texas Tech and got $1 million NIL to do so. And then she re-upped for another $1 million to remain at Texas Tech. And Texas Tech, they have a collective there that just brought a catcher in as well. So Nigeri's going to stay at Texas Tech. But she, one of the things at Stanford, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think that one of the reasons she was looking to leave is because she's a pitcher, but she also hits. She wanted to be able to hit as well. And that was one of the big things.
She obviously can hit.
Yeah, 3-run homer she had against Nebraska. And this was in the kickoff tournament game changer in Clearwater Beach, Florida, or Clearwater, not on the beach, Clearwater, Florida. It was the opening weekend of the season, and Texas Tech showed back then.
So you feel part of the Texas Tech run to the championship series with Texas. You feel connected in that way because you were there at the beginning, and she had a big home run in the College World Series as well. And after that, by the way, we don't have to go on for 10 minutes, but this whole settlement with the House of Representatives and the NCAA and the schools that represents, Mike Gill, are you ready? $20 billion in revenue, $20 billion. It's not all going to go just to the football and basketball players on the men's side. It is going to funnel to the Title IX sports. It's incredible. We essentially have a secondary professional arm of sports now with college sports in the U.S. It's not a professional league per se, but I mean, it's crazy how much money you're going to see continue to flow to all of these different athletes, and including, deservedly so, that the female athletes in Title IX are getting some of that money. They should get some of that money. Pay them what they're worth. Pay them what the market says they're worth.
And what you're going to see now, too, is you're going to see general managers. There are going to be new positions opening. You're going to see all sorts of, modeling after pro sports teams with GMs, assistant GMs,
crazy
CEOs. You're going to have somebody who's running the business arm of it because, I was listening to, I think John Rant had somebody on the podcast, on the Varsity podcast he had on Sunday, and they were talking about how, with pro football, you have different levels of seating prices. Hey, lower level, you sit up top, there's a price. College football, they don't really have that. It's like, hey, everybody gets in for the same $40. Some
do, but
you're going to start to see that evolution of the money and what it costs to go to a game and all that stuff. It's about to change.
It's wild what's going on with that. All right, the United States Open Golf will be on NBC and the Golf Channel this weekend at famed Oakmont Golf Club right outside of Pittsburgh.
They're expecting 200,000 people there, by the way.
By the way, the winning score. So usually in golf, less is more. You want to be under par. And usually the U.S. Open is very difficult, where it's difficult to win being under par. The U.S. Open doesn't want 7 under, 10 under, much less 12 under, 14 under par from these professionals to win their tournament. But when you start talking about the best players in the world can't break par, and the best players in the world start shooting 74, 75, and the contenders to win the U.S. Open Championship are shooting something like a +4 overall final score, +8 final score. The rough is so thick you might lose one of your toddler twins from a daycare if you were me in the rough. They were showing that in some cases, the rough is so thick, if somebody doesn't immediately see your ball, a volunteer, a fan, or something, that you might walk around your ball. They were showing this on the Golf Channel. You might walk around your ball for 5 minutes and never be able, in the area where it is, and never be able to see it and find it. It's crazy. So get ready for high scores and a lot of frustration probably. Scotty Scheffler is obviously the name that everybody's paying attention to, the number one player in the world. He is teeing off midday on Thursday, trying to win the U.S. Open, which he has never won before. Bryson DeChambeau from the LIV Golf Tour is the defending champion. Rory McIlroy, the Masters champion. They have this controversy, Mike. They took his driver from him a couple of weeks ago at the PGA Championship, and he has not played good golf since then, and Rory has been surly with the media about it being leaked out, about his driver being taken. So we got some subplots here at Oakmont, but the main thing may be the course is so difficult from the United States Golf Association that it's going to be tough for any of the stars to even break par in this thing, Mike.
Well, and yes, you're absolutely right about that. And look, it should be a great television event, too, when you're seeing these. That's one of the things sometimes when they struggle, it is relatable. And they're saying, as I mentioned, 200,000 are expected to be at Oakmont. We saw a couple weeks ago the event in Philadelphia. That drew well. So, the golf is drawing well. We'll see how it does on television, though. It's drawing
Scheffler's PGA Championship win for CBS got in the neighborhood of over 5 million people, I believe, on average. It may have been 6 million people on average that were watching that final round. So people have gravitated to him. If he's in contention, you can't guarantee that he's in contention, but stay tuned. All right, so there's a little of the golf this weekend.
Real quick, the ratings for the Sovereignty win just came in.
From Fox. What do you have there? We're showing it to the video audience as we do this live on this Tuesday. What do we have? That 3.83 million. How does that relate? It's not anywhere near what the Kentucky Derby was. It had over 20 million. The first race always gets massively more audience. I would say that's a solid number. Would you say that's a solid number for Fox to do the Triple Crown on a Saturday early evening?
Not to mention it's up from last year, so it's up 5%. Last year, 3.6. It did peak at 5 million viewers for the race time. I mean, again, this thing draws out all day long. But at 7:06 is when I think eventually, the race went off.
I did see it led into the Yankees and the Red Sox, and I think the Yankees and the Red Sox largely held that same audience and had an average of like 3.7 million for the baseball game that night on Fox, Yankees, Red Sox regular season. That they have to be happy with that. If that number's like 1.5 million, that's horrific for them. So that's at least a decent number.
Well, the fact that they put it out, I would imagine that they're happy with it. A lot of times, if they're not happy, they might not even put the graphic together and put that thing out there.
Good point on that. All right, two more things. This was Monday night in Major League Baseball. You never know when these great calls are going to come up. And this was in the A's. Don't call them the Sacramento A's, and they're not the Oakland A's anymore. They're just the Athletics or the A's. The A's and the LA Angels of Anaheim, thank you, were playing on Monday night. And this was a tremendous defensive moment from Desmond Clark, an outstanding defensive player for the A's. He's not well known all over Major League Baseball because the A's don't get a lot of attention. But let's pick up the call here from the call. I believe this is the Comcast Bay Area Sports that had the A's call here. I'm not sure the outlet that had the call, but this is the A's broadcast, and Desmond Clark making like Spider-Man, Mike Gill, if you have that from the call from the Athletics broadcast. If we have this was tremendous the other night.
1-1. That's hit deep in the air to left center. Denzel Clark on the run. He's still going. He reaches out. And did he catch that baseball?
Oh my
goodness, he caught the baseball.
Oh my God. I have never in my life seen an individual run that hard, that fast into a wall.
Okay, so that was a different call. That was earlier in the year against the Orioles. I'm looking for the one from the Angels where he does the Spider-Man up on the wall, Mike, if you're able to find that as we do the show live. It's a live show here. This was from Monday night in the game with Anaheim, and this may be the catch of the year in Major League Baseball. Desmond Clark may have locked up the Gold Glove in the first week of June with this kind of catch. Again, he's a rangy 6'4", 6'5" player, but I'm honing in on the call and the announcer elevating. So here that is as well. If we have that, go ahead.
And this one to center field. Denzel Clark on the move back after he stepped. Oh my God! Makes another catch.
Oh my God!
Back-to-back weeks where he wins the electric play of the week, and he's already on the leaderboard for this week.
You go ahead and book it. I've heard the list. I've seen the list of the greatest catches you're ever going to see in your life. If you don't have room for this one on your list, we're watching two different sports. I mean, Denzel Clark climbs the ladder and then hangs out. You want to talk about playing above the rim, folks. This ball is out of the ballpark by 5-6 feet, and Denzel says, nay, nay, give me that back.
Can we talk about his first step being in?
Incredible. Jenny Kavner, who's caught some criticism as the A's play-by-play person on TV. She's one of them. And that's Dallas Braden, the former pitcher, on the commentary. And that's the first inning. That's the second batter for the Angels in the bottom of the first inning with the great call. You never know when those moments are going to come up in sports. I give her like a 9.5 on the call for that while we're just giving out grades and scores and numbers. I thought that was great. For that call.
And I like Braden, too, who did a really good job climbing the ladder and then going after it. I mean, I think he did a good job of, breaking it back down after she described all the action. The first catch that he made, too, I was watching the Phillies game the other night. Johan Rojas made a similar catch in Pittsburgh this weekend where he just went gliding and came out of the screen. Those type of catches, too. I mean, I think that kind of shows you his range and what kind of player that he is.
You've seen center fielders that can do this, like in the Rays, my Tampa Bay Rays is right over my shoulder. Kevin Kiermaier, tremendous Gold Glove center fielder, would leap up on the wall. Remember, Jim Edmonds was a great center fielder. But then you go back, like in the nostalgia, Willie McGee, the old St. Louis Cardinals center fielder, rangy, athletic, leap over the wall, make a catch. Willie Mays playing center field back in the day. There's a long history. And I'm probably leaving somebody out of great outfielders and center fielders in particular to go run and make a leaping catch. Denzel Clark deserves mention with that, and I think a tremendous call there. I know Jenny Kavner has been getting a lot of criticism with her calls of the game, but she was right on it right there with that.
Good catch, good play, good call, and again the breakdown by Braden. I thought he did a good job as well.
All right. Anything else? By the way, our well wishes to Jay Harris, the ESPN Sports Center anchor who's undergoing prostate cancer treatment and surgery. He hopes to be back later this summer. He is taking a leave of absence from ESPN Sports Center. He's been there for over 20 years. You see him all the time with Hannah Storm on the weekends, 6 p.m. Sports Center all the time previously. So our well wishes there. Anything else in closing here on the pod, Mike Gill, or have we done pretty well?
Real quick, I wanted to mention this because I think it's a interesting story. We talked a lot, a while back about, Pat McAfee, where the media world is going. But this story from Front Office Sports that Major League Baseball has acquired a minority stake in John Boy Media. This is like a very interesting story to me in the whole media realm, sports media rights. I mean, this is a guy who was essentially breaking down video of, illegally almost, MLB video and just having some fun with it. And content creators are getting purchased now. They're saying, hey, we can't find our own talent. We're going to hire you to do it for us. Right. And I give this guy a lot of credit for finding a niche and just, working with it. He
turned his content creation out of his office, his garage, his basement or whatever into a multi-million-dollar enterprise, John Boy Media. And they were the guys that were first on to the Houston Astros cheating scandal with the banging of the trash can as the signal to the batter. 1 bang is fastball, 2 bangs is an off-speed pitch.
Yeah.
They discovered it. They had it out on social media and out on the internet. And now it's not revealed how much Major League Baseball invested, but you got to believe this is probably like mid-7 figures. They got a few $1 million, you would think, from Major League Baseball to content create for them, and maybe even more than that.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Yeah.
Look, And as Front Office Sports reports here, he gets access to the league and team IP, merchandise, sponsorship, collaborations, and now gets a presence or content for the platforms where before, he's kind of like doing this underground. Like, there'll be a mound visit, and he's kind of, hey, what do you want to get? Us a couple burgers tonight? Yeah, let's go down to that pizza place. He's breaking down the thing of like what
scoop.
Right. Exactly. And now I think it's an unbelievable hat tip to that guy for getting that. So,
by the way, great stuff there about John Boy Media and a success story and welcome to the internet. Do we have time for one more bit of nostalgia? It was 40 years ago tonight. I was a big fan forever of the United States Football League. The USFL played for 3 seasons, 1983, 84, and 85. And in 1985, the Herschel Walker, who did not go to the NFL right away out of the University of Georgia, he went to the United States Football League playing for whose team? Mike Gill? Donald Trump as the owner. Doug Flutie won a Heisman winner as the quarterback. Herschel Walker as a Heisman winner at running back. So this is the 85 season where the New Jersey Generals were playing at home in the summer of 85, June the 10th, 1985, 40 years ago tonight. And our buddy, my colleague, my good friend from the New Orleans Saints broadcast and now from CBS to Fox, Tim Brando. A young Tim Brando you're going to hear on the call here of this. I believe, Mike, I sent it to you here from ESPN as Brando is on the call from ESPN of that night of the USFL game with the Generals, the New Jersey Generals, and the Jacksonville Bulls. Check into it. I think I sent the link to you. If I did not, I'm about to send it to you again, Mike. I know we're trying to do this on the fly live, but this is from 1985 on ESPN's Coverage and Call. Tim actually shared the video out here of this as Herschel Walker. The year before, Eric Dickerson had broken the NFL record. And Mike, I don't know. I don't know what this is or not. I'm just going to double check here again. It should be a shorter thing than that. Yes, you should be able to cut it off here when we play it. Mike and I are communicating off the air. Eric Dickerson had set the NFL all-time rushing record, had broken the previous rushing record of Jim Brown. And so now this was Herschel Walker the following summer in the United States Football League, running for more than 2,200 yards in a USFL season, not an NFL season. Anyway, here's Timmy B on the call, June 10th, 1985. If we have the audio, go ahead, Mike.
And then some. Look out record. Walker touchdown. First and 10, New Jersey at their 45. They lead 24-10. Herschel, 5, 10, and then some. Look out record. Walker touchdown.
Shout out to Timmy B and to Herschel Walker. That's 40 years ago tonight, my friend. June the 10th, 1985, that Herschel Walker broke the then pro football rushing record. Eric Dickerson never acknowledged that, by the way, and I think still does it to this day.
Well, is he wrong?
But still, the USFL had notoriety.
It did.
At that time. They had audience. They had attendance. They had television ratings. Even if it was a lesser league, a minor league or a secondary league of the NFL.
Well,
fun to reminisce.
Now, I'm watching the UFL a little bit here. I did watch the Fox broadcast the other night and the ABC broadcast. So the USFL conference was on ABC. The XFL broadcast conference was on Fox. Now the championship game is this weekend. I think it's on ABC. Was it Saturday night?
Coming up Saturday night, well, they will have the championship game. That is correct, with Michigan and the DC Defenders, right?
Yes,
the
so
Michigan
the DC
Panthers.
Defenders were of the old XFL. The Michigan was of the relaunched USFL. Now,
the Michigan Panthers are the original USFL champions in 1983. Bobby Hebert and Anthony Carter and the Michigan Panthers won the first ever USFL title. The next 2 years were won by, in your market, the Philadelphia and the Baltimore Stars, the same franchise with Jim Mora as the coach. And I want to say, was Todd Blackledge the quarterback? That might be right. That Blackledge might have been the quarterback of that. I'm trying to remember. Or Chuck Fusina. Chuck Fusina was the quarterback from Penn State. So those were the 3 USFL champions before the league sued the NFL and went belly up and ceased.
Well, they got some bad advice from one of their owners.
From Donald Trump, wanting them to compete with the NFL in the fall.
I'm just saying. They got some bad advice from one of their owners.
But the UFL, back to the point, is Michigan and D.C. And what do we expect that number is that number going to be 3 million, 2 or 3 million in prime time?
I would imagine. Yeah, I mean, I watch a little bit. I mean, Anthony Beck's a buddy of ours. He's the coach of I went to college with Anthony. We keep in touch still. He's the coach of St. Louis. So when they play, I'll try to check in from time to time. I'm not a hardcore watcher of the league. I think they do a great job with the broadcast, by the way. It's a great training ground to kind of get broadcasters some reps. But I will say, the original incarnation of the USFL had something.
Oh, absolutely.
This one is just kind of a television made for TV. You could hear in Brando's call, you could hear the crowd being a part of that game, and they had something there and got really terrible advice to move that to try to go to the fall.
And spring football will never, ever be able to recapture that magic. Again, it's a different time in TV, too. TV was a big part of it because ESPN was showing the games. ABC Network TV on the weekend was showing the games with Keith Jackson and Lynn Swann calling it. So it was
one
a
of the
deal.
things that they had that this incarnation does not have is they had stars. You had Herschel Walker. You had Jim Kelly. You had Doug Flutie.
While we stay on the subject, they had free agency and big money to lure the college stars and lure the NFL players to come play for them.
Right.
That was a big deal. And it eventually it took a decade, but it led to the NFL having to relent finally and say, let's have free agency and let's have high-priced bidding on players. And the rest is history with how many multi-millionaires that's made.
Yeah, but that was the big
years.
difference was the USFL had college players electing to go play for them, which made them a viable product. Herschel Walker was a junior. He could not enter the NFL draft, so he said, fine, I'll go play in the USFL, which then the NFL had to relax their draft rules to allow juniors to come out early and enter their draft. But these players, Reggie White, you ever hear of him? Steve Young. I mean, you had the best players in the history of the game playing in this league.
Jim Kelly of the Houston Gamblers, on and on down the list of great players they had in that league. Romantic time period. That's 40 years ago. Shout out Timmy B, Tim Brando on the Last Word on Sports Media podcast with that call of the game. Have we pretty well? I think we pretty well covered everything from NBA Finals, Stanley Cup Finals, all the other sports, Major League Baseball, great call.
Real quick on Major League Baseball, Commissioner Manfred kind of admitting that he regrets getting out of the ESPN deal. Because he's got nothing right now. Got nothing.
Well, I mean, it's gone back and forth. I mean, he's got to pick a lane because he was talking at least a week ago about how they had multiple suitors for a Sunday night game. Let's be honest.
All for less money.
Yeah, they've devalued it so much. You're not going to get – I still foresee, and I will make this prediction again here on this June Tuesday while we're doing this, and the podcast audience is hearing it later on. I believe there'll be some kind of compromise with ESPN where ESPN produces a Sunday night game, let's say, that airs on the MLB network, something like that. Or maybe somebody else ends up producing the game and they try to enhance the MLB network as the place to see it. The MLB network, for God's sake, already does its own original games and shows all kinds of other games. Why not have a Sunday night standalone game? Maybe that's what they do. I don't know. I don't have any insight, but let's see. I'll make that prediction. Let's see if that's what's happening. Is that going to be the future of Sunday Night Baseball? If it goes to a streaming service, you're going to lose so much more audience on a regular season basis. We'll see. Right. Mike Gill, great stuff. Anything else? Are we good?
That's all I got for you today.
I think we're pretty good on that. Catch Mike on the Sports Bash weekday afternoons in Atlantic City. 97.3 ESPN is his afternoon show. I'm merely TJ Reeves. Follow us on social media, Mike Gill Show YouTube page. Also on the podcast feed on Apple, Spreaker, Spotify. It's the Last Word on Sports Media podcast.